Hey everyone, it's Petra here from Petra Fisher Movement. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about how to sit on the floor so your back doesn't hurt and you don't feel like you're slouching. When I asked a bunch of you what your barrier was to floor sitting, that was a big one. And I think you can probably problem solve this all by yourself with stuff you already have in your house just by using the right bolstering. When I use the term bolster, I don't necessarily mean yoga bolster. I mean blankets, I mean cushions, I mean whatever you have around. What happens with our bodies is if you spend a lot of time in chairs, like we all have, is our bodies adapt to those chairs. We need to de-adapt our bodies from chairs if we want to sit on the ground. So the missing piece for many people is that they try to go from all chairs all the time to all floor all the time, and that hurts because you're not ready for it. So let me demonstrate what not ready for it can look like. So if I take my body, and I sit on the floor a lot, but I'm not quite there yet. If I take my body and sit on the floor like this, can you see how my lower back is rounding? This is a position that often causes lower back pain. It shortens our pelvic floor. It actually stops our internal core muscles from working optimally because what's happening right now is I'm tucking my pelvis. And I can tell that because my pubic bone is way in front of my ASISs or hip bones. My low back is curved. I just don't have enough hamstring to sit like this in a way that doesn't curve my low back. I actually can sit quite comfortably in a V-sit with a neutral curve in my low back because I just happen to have that mobility. So the way you sit on the floor makes a difference in terms of how you feel, and that's something I'm going to talk about more as well. But for most of us, we're a bit too tight through the hips and hamstrings to sit on the floor in comfort and ease. Our lower back's round, we feel really slouchy, and we start to wonder if we're even doing any good. And the truth is, we can do a lot better for ourselves if only we cushion and bolster properly. So what I think about when I'm bolstering is trying to get to a point where I can sit with ease on my sit bones. And what that's going to look like is a pretty, what I'd call a neutral curve in my low back. This might be a good height for me here. So I always check my front. I check my pubic bone and my ASISs. That can take a little bit of practice to get used to, and I teach that a lot in my programs. But for our purposes today, you just want to feel like you're balanced well on your sit bones and that the curve in your low back is pretty relaxed, not curved and rounded, unforced, neutral. So like it would be if you were standing normally for most people. There's no magic to a neutral low back, but many people are going to find this decreases the pain, the feeling of slouching, and again, it helps your core turn on better when you're on the floor if you're in what's called a neutral pelvis. Now, what I'm demonstrating is a height of bolstering that works great for my body, but guess what? It's terrible for my boyfriend. So for him, I might stick him on 2 bolsters so that he can sit on the ground in a way that's comfortable for his body, because all our bodies are different. Often people don't like the idea of having to sit on a lot of cushions because we have a weird thing in our culture that says that you're not as good as someone who's able to sit on the floor with no cushions. And the way I think of that is actually that it's totally backwards. The real step forward is when you start to meet your body where you are at. And if that means 45 cushions, then that's awesome because you are a spiritual Jedi who can actually meet yourself where you're at. So pretending to be more bendy than you are doesn't get you any points, as far as I'm concerned. It might on Instagram. So bolstering can be used for this low back curve. And let me show you what the difference is when I bolster and don't bolster my legs out in front. So you can see this is about as comfortable as I can be. I'm in that kind of slouchy position, right? Now I'm going to add my half roller. I love half rollers. I have lots of info on my Instagram about how you can get your own half roller if you want to do that. And I can see I'm a lot better here, but I'm actually not as high as I would like to be for my leg straight position. So I'm going to take a couple of these convenient cushions. I'm going to add them to my half roller, stick my legs out in front. And this is a really nice, comfortable place for me to sit. By the way, the same thing works when you're in a chair. Being on your sit bones with a neutral pelvis is a great place to sit from the point of view of your low back and your pelvic floor. Is it a rule? No, it's an option. Your body might like this option more than it likes the alternative option. Our bodies often do. Leg straight out is one of the more challenging places for most people because of our chair sitting and shoe wearing habits. We tend to be a little short through the backs of our legs. So bolstering here and sitting here like this, for me, would actually be a really great option to give myself more access to more hamstring length. So anything that's hard for you, if you bolster to the point where you're just kind of at your edge, that will help you adapt and make changes over time. So I don't do this very often, and therefore it's a little harder for me. I love V-sitting, and that's probably one of the reasons that I'm better at it. I'm able to do it with less bolstering than with my legs straight out. But V-sitting is a great position to sit in on the floor, especially if you've got pelvic floor stuff going on. Often your inner thighs will be pretty tight. So for me, I don't need much bolstering here, but again, for you, use as much as you need. It's awesome. Add it. It's great for you. So bolster away. Another position I particularly like is kneeling. I'll show you how to bolster your kneeling. For many people, kneeling is tough either on your knees or on the tops of your feet. So this could help with both. I usually like yoga blocks for kneeling bolstering. And all I do is I take my yoga block, I usually like it kind of on its medium height for my body. I stick it in between my ankles and I sit that way. And this takes a lot of pressure off my feet. My knees don't mind this position, but guess what? You could bolster a little higher. I might fall off here. It might be too much. But you can see now I'm not in as much knee bend and my feet have a lot less pressure. So you get to play with it. There's no right or wrong. There's just what's working for you. I might actually fall off these ones. So I might use a different stack of stuff for this one. So there you go. That's a kneeling option. And of course, don't hesitate to stick something under your knees. A true yoga bolster could be nice for kneeling as well because it's a little softer and just might be a little more straightforward for you. So in the floor sitting strength video that I showed, I was suggesting that you work on your toe mobility. Kneeling is a great place to work on your toe. This is called toe extension, your toes being bent like this mobility. And you just bolster up as much as you need to so that you're not crushing your toes. You can spend some time here, and that's going to help you with your walking. It's going to help you with your big toe function, and it's going to help you with your floor sitting because you're going to be working on your mobility. You just use as much stuff underneath you as you need to make it tolerable. Will it be tolerable for 4 hours? Probably not. So that's another thing about floor sitting. You're going to move more when you floor sit than when you sit in a chair because it's less comfortable. That's an asset because we should be moving probably once every 10 to 15 minutes minimum to keep our tissues healthy. So if you have to shift around a bit, if you can reframe that as a benefit, you're going to really win with this stuff. Now let's talk about cross-legged. So cross-legged sitting can be really awesome, but there's a few considerations I want to share about it. So first of all, same thing with your pelvis, bolster up so that you can have a neutral low back. A lot of people cross their legs the same way every time. Especially if you have SI joint stuff going on, that's not a great idea. You might even want to avoid cross-legged sitting completely if you have SI joint stuff going on, just to give your body a break, because this is a pattern that can show up in your low back SI joint. However, one easy alternative is just to change the cross of your legs frequently. So there's a little tip for you. Next thing I hear is Taylor's bunions or it hurts my ankles. This is my favorite tip ever. This is where your half dome is super handy, but you can use whatever. Stick your half dome underneath your ankles, relax your legs, suddenly less pressure on the outer edge of the foot, less pressure on your ankles, so much more comfortable. This is one of my favorites and I recommend it all the time. I'm pleased to say it's one I think I invented, so it's always nice when you get to invent a thing. Next thing I hear is one knee is really stiff and sore, both knees are stiff and sore. I look like this. This is a sign that you will benefit from working on your hip mobility. There again, the place to start is with CARS in my Joints for Life program. There's a lot more you can do on hip mobility, but I always like to start with foundations. Having said that, yes, you can bolster your knees. So grab your stuff, find a place where you can support your knee that needs support, and just go ahead and support it. This is very helpful for lots of people. This might let your body even relax and calm down, and over time you might find you don't need as much support just from bolstering. A lot of what keeps us tight is our brains guarding and protecting. So when you bolster, you give your body a chance to feel safe and to let go. So use a knee bolster as much as you need. And then if you have to change positions in 10 minutes, that's awesome because you've given yourself a chance to adapt. So we've talked V sitting, we've talked straight ahead sitting. You can play around. You can have a bent knee and a straight leg. This is a little bit of squatting input for you. Great way to work on your squat in a very low pressure environment. If you want to work on your squat, you can once again bolster up your pelvis and just kind of be in this supported squat position. It's another great option. Cobbler, where you bring your the insides of your feet together. That could be nice. This isn't one of my personal favorites. And it does put some pressure on the outside edges of the feet. So it's not just one that I just don't go to very often. You can play around with different kneeling variations. There's tons of options. And I encourage you to explore all the options because one of the great benefits of floor sitting is variety. I think that's everything I have to say about bolstering. I'll just finish by adding that what we are looking for in floor sitting is a combination of comfort and discomfort. If it sucks, you're never going to do it. That's one of the reasons we bolster is so it doesn't suck. It can suck if your house is cold. So if your house is cold, give yourself the benefit of some matting or some sort of large cushioning on the floor. The yoga world has all kinds of options you can purchase. You can use blankets, you can use rugs. Like, don't make floor sitting horrible for yourself. Make it inviting and comfortable. That's a big way to help yourself do it more because you're human and you're smart, which means you're going to avoid doing things that suck. One thing that I do recommend avoiding, however, is making it too comfortable. So if your floor sitting starts to look like your couch and you've put something against a wall and you can kind of like lounge in your floor sitting and now you're super comfortable, now you're not doing as much good for your body as you were before because now the wall is supporting you. You're once again in that tucked pelvis position that we all love so much. And you're not getting the core benefits that you would be getting if you were self-supporting. So we want self-supported to get the most benefits. If you have to lean against the wall, then by all means, lean against the wall. It's not going to be a problem. But if you want to get the reason that we're floor sitting is for variety, is for pelvic floor health, is to change the patterns of our low back, is to help our core turn on. And if you're floor sitting by leaning on a couchy thing, you're just not going to get the benefits. So that's my final suggestion for you. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to make one more post in this series on kind of mobility basics for floor sitting. And like I said, I encourage you to see both the other posts in this series and all of my courses and programs because these are really foundational elements of everything I teach. Okay, thanks for joining me.